So let's talk to David from Grass Valley, California, first of all. Hi, David. Welcome to The Narrow Path. Thanks for calling.
Hi, Steve. My question this time is about the kingdom of God. Specifically, what is the kingdom of God? Who's in it? When does it exist? And kind of a synopsis.
Well, you know, I have a series of lectures called The Kingdom of God that goes into that in more detail than I can here. It'd be very helpful probably, but let me just give you a brief answer. The kingdom of God is a reference to the kingdom that Jesus established when he came here under himself. He's the Lord, he's the king, and those who are subject to him are his kingdom. This was something that was promised in the Old Testament. God had told Israel in Exodus that they could be his kingdom if they were obedient, but they were not. And so the kingdom was taken from them and given to a nation that would bring forth the fruits of it, that is, to the church. Jesus said that himself in Matthew chapter 21, verse 43. He said to them, the kingdom is taken from you and given to a nation that will bring forth the fruits of it. So Israel was the kingdom of God in the Old Testament because they had God as their king and they were his subjects. But of course they rebelled against him, especially in the time of Samuel when they said that they wanted an earthly king instead of God. And so they had earthly kings for a while in rebellion against God. But the prophets said that God would establish his kingdom again through a shepherd king that he would send who would be like David. And that was, of course, a reference to the Messiah. So when John the Baptist began to preach that the kingdom of God was at hand or near, the Jews to whom he was speaking understood that this was something they'd been hoping for. The prophets had been predicting that God would restore the kingdom. In fact, the disciples even asked Jesus, the last question they asked him in Acts chapter 1 is, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? They were hoping that Israel, the nation, would be the kingdom of God again. However, Jesus said that he had taken the kingdom from the larger mass of Israel and given it to the remnant of Israel, the faithful remnant, which is, of course, Paul explains in Romans chapter 9 that that was what God intended to do from the beginning. They are not all Israel who are of Israel, is what he said. And so the kingdom is now made up of Jews and Gentiles who are part of that believing remnant, the disciples of Jesus. And what it means to be in the kingdom is that when you're born again, you're born into the kingdom. Remember, Jesus said, unless you're born again, you cannot enter the kingdom of God, he said to Nicodemus. So when you're born again, you're born into the kingdom. You're baptized as a rite of commitment to Christ as your king. And then you live out your life as in obedience to him. And those people who are living their lives to serve Christ as king, they are collectively his kingdom. It's a movement that Jesus said would begin like a little mustard seed but grow into a huge plant. And sure it has. It was a pretty small group when Jesus was here, but it's grown into a worldwide phenomenon.
So could we say that right now the kingdom of God is the same as the church?
Yeah, and that would have been true in the Old Testament too, because the word church, ecclesia, is a word that was used in the Old Testament, in the Greek Old Testament, for Israel. So it is identified with Israel, but the church is Israel, always has been. The difference is that Israel in the Old Testament was defined by the covenant that God made at Mount Sinai, and now Israel is defined by the covenant Christ made with the remnant of Israel when he was in the upper room and made the new covenant. A person could not be in the church legitimately if they're not part of the kingdom of God, because being in the kingdom of God means that Jesus is your king and your Lord. And of course, that's exactly what a person agrees to when they become part of the church, at least in biblical times they did. I realize that many people join churches today without a clue what they're signing up for, which is a shame. Churches should be better than they are about letting people know about that kind of thing. But when you become a Christian, you're saying, Jesus is my king. I belong to him. He's my Lord. He owns me. And my whole life has only one purpose, and that's to please him and promote his interests. That's what it means to be a Christian. That's what it means to be in the church. That's what it means to be in the kingdom.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks for your call. God bless you. Again, my lectures on the kingdom of God really unpacks what the Bible teaches on this subject in greater detail. So if you go to thenarrowpath.com and to the tab that says topical lectures, you'll find a series called The Kingdom of God. Everything at the website is free, so you can just download it and listen to it for free.